back to her country of origin, Turkey, where she finally got a proper diagnosis of tick-borne disease. Turkey, of all places, is better than the U.S. Her vision is failing at 19, and I fear that the Bartonella is causing optic nerve ischemia, as my daughter's is. Natalia, a 40-year-old beautiful African-American hairdresser, Lyme Bartonella, 22 visits to the ER in North Carolina. A friend finally told her to check for Lyme disease. The internist did the lab work finally and then told her something that really friggin' haunts me. You are positive for Lyme, but I cannot treat you because it's been in your body for too long. And she promptly turfed her. Her symptoms were over a year: 100-pound weight loss, headache, pain, the Bart crazies, disturbed sleep, nightmares, and heart palpitations. Natalia also attempted suicide, and lucky for all of us, she was not successful. She found a PhD microbiologist to treat her. She and her husband have lost everything, cars and apartments, due to the expenses. She said to me, "It's evil, Janice. It's just evil what the doctors are doing to us." John, 14, and his mom in Rhode Island, both positive for tick-borne diseases for 3 years. He was wheelchair-bound due to Bartonella neuropathy, homeschooled, and has spent over $100,000 for both of them. They are receiving IVIG and now doing SOT in desperate attempt to find healing and regain their lost lives. The prestigious Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, who is affiliated with Lifespan Hospitals, has stated, quote, "Scientists at Brown University have predicted that more than 2 million people in the U.S. could suffer profound disability from post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome by the end of this year." So there is a very strange and inexplicable disconnect from what these scientists at Brown with the Lifespan are finding and what the Lifespan Rhode Island Hospital doctors are doing within that organization to and for Lyme victims. So that brings me to the lawsuit of Torrey versus Infectious Disease Society of America. 8 insurance companies have agreed to settle the case. Shapiro and others are guilty in this suit for colluding with the insurance companies so they prevent Lyme sufferers from getting Lyme treatment. What the heck? Get him off the group. Get him off the group. Exactly. He represents no one. Time. You're welcome.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Betty Gordon.
Hi, I'm from Iowa. I've been very disappointed from this committee monopolized by the IDSA, CDC, NIH mentality thinking, and the conflict of interest agendas, and the constant attacks to our lone patient rep, Pat Smith. I read where 3 of you specialize in Rexidia, not Lyme disease: David, Jean, and Kevin. David Walker, you owe Pat Smith a sincere, heartfelt apology for your rudeness to her at the entire last meeting. Your behavior was that of a toddler with its favorite toy being taken away. You attacked Pat during this meeting and the many meetings prior. So glad that Pat let go, saying what was on her mind to many thousands of us patients here in America. It was ridiculous. One patient rep, where we had 4 the first meeting, to have to contend with the 3 or 4 of you constantly attacking her. The odds were stacked against Pat, but you didn't pull the wool over her eyes. She was vocal each time you tried something. When Bob Sarantino's time was up, another patient rep should have been appointed, not the person that was. Next committee needs 4 patient reps, including one of our ILADS treating doctors. Cooper, thank you for my heart for pairing with Pat on the patient committee. You two complemented each other very much. Also, thank you, Sam Donta, as a former treating doctor. You were a real asset on this committee in calming things down many times. Jean wasn't at many meetings this year. Walker voted for him each time and didn't advise the committee about this prior to someone questioning why he was voting for the 2 people. Unacceptable. Future meetings, please ask callers to have their dogs in another area far from the phone so we don't hear him barking. My late husband, Jack Gordon, died November 13th, 2014, from two tick-borne diseases, Lyme and the Bartonella 2 species, plus a cluster of 24 nematode parasitic worms having Lyme inside of them, plus Lewy body dementia, causing his visual and balance hallucinations like Robin Williams had. These four things were found in the two brain autopsies I had done on him. Jack was never diagnosed with any of these diseases. I've tried for 5 years getting Jack's death certificate amended to what his two brain autopsies show with no progress. Iowa Department of Health told my lawyers they would fight me on this involving Iowa's Attorney General's office, costing me thousands of dollars. Why? He wasn't added to Iowa's Lyme state statistics either. The books were closed. It'd also be nice if you, in your public comments, would be require people to write short paragraphs double-spaced. Would you require that in the 21-22 committee? So we neurocognitive patients like me, misdiagnosed for 35 years by 40 to 50 doctors, would be able to read and comprehend their posted letters to the committee. Thank you very much. Betty Gordon from Iowa. And thank you to the committee members who did do a good job on this.
Thank you. Holly Ahern.
Good morning. Based on the proceedings of this tick-borne disease working group and the release a few days ago of a new set of medical guidelines which are really not new at all, the need for an unbiased evaluation of all the available science related to Lyme disease has never been more apparent. The intent of the legislation which directed HHS to convene this body, as it was originally drafted and passed nearly unanimously by the House in 2016, was to impanel a group with diverse viewpoints to do a deep dive into the myriad of issues surrounding Lyme disease diagnosis and treatment. For reasons that remain unclear but are undoubtedly related to the decades-long and contentious battle between Lyme disease patients and the NIH and CDC, the language that became law was changed to encompass all tick-borne diseases. However, as specified by Dr. Anthony Fauci in an article published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2018, Lyme disease alone represents 82% of reported cases of tick-borne illness in the United States. Lyme disease should therefore encompass at least that much of the work done by this body. New cases of Lyme disease exceed those of most other infectious diseases in this country. A significant proportion of Lyme disease patients develop a long-term debilitating illness, which the prevailing medical guidelines labels as medically unexplained symptoms. The newest iteration of the guidelines further state, the question remains whether patients with these highly heterogeneous symptoms but no alternative diagnoses should be treated as if they had Lyme disease and, in the opinion of some, treated for an extended period of time. No high-quality studies have addressed this question. Having served on the Testing and Diagnostic Subcommittee of the 2018 Working Group, I can confidently assert that there is no diagnostic tool available that can accurately discern people who are actively infected with Borrelia burgdorferi from those who are not. Although this is always stated in reverse, it is therefore not possible to know whether patients with highly heterogeneous symptoms do not, in fact, actually have Lyme disease. So how then do you define or design a high-quality study when you can't accurately discriminate your cases from controls or reliably determine whether antibiotics are an effective treatment since there is no actual endpoint, or confidently declare that chronic Lyme disease is not actually Lyme disease at all? And the answer is, you can't. Denying patients access to health care based on results of blood tests known to be inaccurate, on poorly designed clinical studies, and on decades-old medical bias that active infections produce only a few rigid clinical signs is discrimination. Deeply institutionalized discrimination. Better science is available, and it's time to move on. Thank you. That concludes my statements.
Thank you. Mira Shapiro.
My name is Myra Shapiro, and I'm a chronic Lyme disease patient, biostatistician, and data scientist who works with LymeDisease.org and their My Lyme Data patient registry. I also have more than a decade of experience consulting on multiple government healthcare projects. Although there's an excess of 400,000 new cases of Lyme disease annually, it is a disadvantaged disease from a research perspective. Today, I would like to discuss Lyme disease research and how, as a community, we need to work together and bring data from disparate sources to bear to move research forward to better understand, test for, and treat Lyme patients from acute to chronic forms. There are many types of data that can be used for healthcare research. Some that people are most aware of are clinical trials results, patient charts, and medical records. In addition, patient registries like MyLyme Data and other specialized surveys can be the stars of a research study or used in conjunction with other sources. Serum and tissue banks, autopsy reports, and social media content are also valuable sources of data that can be incorporated into research designs. These different types of evidence should be viewed as complementary rather than competing. All evidence types have strengths and weaknesses. With advances in technology, we're able to harness vast amounts of data from many sources in multiple forms to create valuable, usable information. Applying statistical, machine learning, and artificial intelligence techniques to these collections of data will allow us to create research designs to accelerate our ability to understand the Lyme patient population while at the same time protecting, most important, patient privacy. Greater volumes of data will allow us to better understand the path to diagnosis, patient profiles, and treatment successes and failures, informing better disease identification and patient-centered care and treatment. Although there are differing opinions in the Lyme community, I know that we can agree that we want patients to get accurate diagnoses and treatments that improve their conditions and quality of life and reduce the burden of disease on society in general. The new Tick-Borne Disease Working Group will be convening in 2021. I hope that one of the priorities will be encouraging and insisting the medical and healthcare research community to leverage the wealth of available data to fuel a Lyme disease research engine that focuses on patient-centered research and solutions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I will turn it over to David Walker.
Thank you, Leanne. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Kristen Honey, who is a Senior Advisor to the Assistant Secretary for Health and Chief Data Scientist. She also served as co-chair of the 2018 Tick-Borne Diseases Working Group, and so she understands exactly where we stand today. I look forward to her presentation on Lyme innovation and LymeX public-private partnership. Dr. Honey.
People who have shared. Hello. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Hopefully.
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Thanks to the whole Tick-Borne Disease Working Group and to all the patients, advocates, and those who have spoken up and shared their experiences over the past 18 meetings. One thing that has really become clear through your voices and recent acts and new legislation by Congress is that there's a big problem here that needs solving with Lyme disease. And it's about 80% of tick-borne diseases, 70% of vector-borne disease. So when you're looking at this big ecosystem and many different diseases, Lyme is a huge problem for many, many Americans. So what we have done from Health and Human Services is try to address this complex, multifaceted challenge from multiple angles. Next slide, please. In response to the 2018 report, there were many recommendations, as you all know, and turning these recommendations into concrete actions to have an impact in the real world was really what the office I was with, in the office of the Chief Technology Officer, aimed to do. So soon after that report was published in November 2018, the immediate office of the Secretary with the Chief Technology Officer, in collaboration with other parts of HHS, launched what we call the Lyme Innovation Initiative. This was about using collaboration, data-driven innovation, emerging technologies, and strategic partnerships to accelerate progress in this complex area. I have to give a huge shout out to the community because this was not an idea that came from government and the top down. This was built on the shoulders and years of work from the community, including we heard Lorraine Johnson and LymeDisease.org leading crowdsourcing efforts to identify top 10 priorities of the diverse Lyme community. Many patient voices reflected in that. We had data scientists self-organizing with hackathons across the country. MIT Hacking Medicine, Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley hosted many Lyme innovation hackathons. There was huge community momentum and a clear need for this. So what we did was connect the bottom-up efforts, and the bottom-up kind of signaled and trying to develop community solutions with top-down spotlight, recognition there's a problem, and the intent to hopefully increase Lyme disease in a priority, but also through funding. With the top-down approach, we have resources, and when real transformative change happens, it's where the bottom-up community needs connect with top-down priorities and resources. Next slide, please. So with this, this 2 years later has evolved into a $25 million, what we're calling LymeX Innovation Accelerator. This was recently launched in October, publicly announced in October at the Lyme Mind Conference. Many of you, I think, were participants or online viewers of the Lyme Mind Conference. And what it rolled out was this new collaboration between Health and Human Services, or HHS, and the Stephen Alexander Cohen Foundation. This is the largest Lyme disease public-private partnership in history. And our intention behind this was getting started with the Lyme innovation and smaller scale events. We had roundtables, we had listening sessions, we did a lot in the community, validated over 2 years that yes, there's a need here. We need to go bigger. We need to have orders of magnitude more impact here. Since the 2018 time, the Kay-Hagan-Tick Act has passed, as you've heard. That was in 2019. That was when Congress authorized $30 million new dollars every year for 5 years for vector-borne disease, Lyme and tick-borne diseases being a big component of vector-borne disease. It's important to note that the Kay-Hagan-Tick Act was $30 million a year authorized by Congress. Authorized means that they have given approval to spend the money, new money in this way, but no dollars have yet been appropriated by Congress. So the Kay-Hagan-Tick Act doesn't yet have money behind it to implement at this time, new money behind it. And if people want to unlock that, it's Congress you talk to. It is not HHS, it is not CDC, it is not NIH. We cannot control the budget. But what we can do is decide not to wait for Congress appropriations to come. We know they're coming at some point. We don't know when, but we know it can take a long time. So this is when we started to get creative and look at other sectors and other resources. And public-private partnerships can really, really be a force multiplier and an accelerator on how to get things started immediately, leveraging the strengths and resources not just of government, but from other sectors. So for the Lyme Innovation or LymeX Innovation Accelerator, we took a playbook from what we call the Kidney X Innovation Accelerator. And that was started 2 years before our launch, and really the first ever grand prize challenge where tens of millions of dollars are put up on a area in medicine that is stagnated and you haven't had market innovation for a long time, and the quality of life and outcomes for patients is poor. Kidney care is very much that. Dialysis has not changed in the past 40 years. We're using 1970s technology. You could also argue that Lyme disease is using 1980s technology, and things have not moved forward in the diagnostic space, the treatment space. And when we put a spotlight on that, it really that can accelerate progress. And this is not just unlocking government dollars, but most importantly, what Kidney X taught us is that when HHS put a spotlight on the challenge of kidney care, private industry and venture capitalists and angel investors took it as a signal that this is a priority for the federal government therefore it unlocked a lot of private capital. So the KidneyX Innovation Accelerator was a $25 million initiative, but it ended up unlocking a lot more dollars from other private sectors. They just, HHS and their KidneyX partnership was the leader in leaning into that to catalyze change. So we took that playbook. We, through many iterations and events, talking to people within government, outside of government, came up with the 3 focus areas that you'll see here: patient-centered innovation, education and awareness, and the next generation diagnostics. Patient-centered innovation because clearly there's much more to do in listening to your stories, learning from your lived experience, learning from all the different types of evidence out there. And lived experience, they may be individual anecdotes, but when you crowdsource those into 15,000, patient records and in patient registries, that's data. That's translating experiences into quantifiable things that we can find new signals and new patterns in. But doing that around the patient experience is a pillar of this work. The second area we're going to lean into is education and awareness. There's no disagreement, or very little disagreement, about needing more education and awareness to all stakeholders. So we'll be doing a series of events around this, a series of kind of unconventional approaches to education and awareness using crowdsourcing, citizen science, and prize challenges, meaning, you put out like an X Prize style. The first group, or the group that does this the best, will receive an award. And then the most, I think, important and impactful area of the space is the next generation of diagnostics. There are many, many, many diagnostics in the, technologies that are on the market and emerging. But the faster we can accelerate this and get the new generation of diagnostics through the regulatory process so that they're actually meeting all FDA standards, this will be game-changing. We will be able to have a more nuanced discussion about whether folks have active Borrelia infection, co-infections, whatever it is. Right now with diagnostics, we're kind of flying blind. So we want to update the diagnostic space. And again, this is not a science grant. This is putting out a grand prize challenge. The first companies or innovators or entrepreneurs to deliver solutions that meet certain criteria will win the prizes. I should emphasize that LymeX does not in any way replace or supersede other government programs that are focused on ticks or tick-borne diseases. For all of CDC's prevention and control, that continues full steam ahead. NIH is investing in basic science, full steam ahead. The Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health running this tick-borne disease working group, full steam ahead. This is another work stream and another way to tackle this multifaceted challenge. Next slide, please. So how can you get involved? If you're a patient, a caregiver, a loved one, a clinician who sees these complex cases and they don't really match up with some of the peer-reviewed literature, how can we engage? HHS, in collaboration with many external folks and other health issues, have developed this model that we call Health Plus. It's a framework and an ongoing set of touch points where it puts people, and in this case, patients, at the center to understand it from all different perspectives using human-centered design. And it goes through different cycles. We've done this with Indian Health Services and their IT modernization. HHS has done it with sickle cell, and we think this model is great for Lyme disease. So it's a bunch of different work streams and a bunch of different elements to this complex Health Plus model. In the slides, you'll see a link on this to a website, gives you many, many more details. But the gist is we hired neutral third-party contractors who will go out in the community and listen to you, and then they will roll up dozens, sometimes over 100 interviews into common themes, or what we call archetypes or personas, where are the pitfalls and the challenges that typically happen across these many, many different people, and where do those pain points align with the levers and the different things that government can do to fix them. So this is a labor-intensive process, and we need a lot of people to be interviewed and volunteer to be interviewed and share their experiences. Again, this will not be HHS interviewing. It'll be a neutral third-party organization, so you can share candidly, and the information will be rolled up by neutral third parties, not by government. and then their outcomes will be information for government to consider and potentially respond to. So I will, the next slide, give some details of how to engage specifically. Right here, you can have your voice heard going to the website LymeX, LYMEX, .crowdicity.com, and it's on this slide, and the slides will be available and are available on the Tick-Borne Disease Working Group. And once you go to that, it's an open innovation crowdsourcing platform. So anyone can sign up for free, share their experiences, sign up for an interview, offer why you want to participate in this. We also wanted to build on the bottom-up community momentum that LymeDisease.org and many of you did over the years, I believe 2015 to 2017, through a series of events and crowdsourcing efforts that ultimately turned online, virtual. And it was thousands of folks participated, and then out of that came a paper with top 10 research priorities. So we seeded this kind of what are the priorities with those top 10, because we want these efforts to build upon what is already known. But you can add your own submissions, you can do more. But for right now, the number one thing you can do in engaging with this Health Plus model, if you have lived experience that you would like to share through a different work stream beyond the Tick-Borne Disease Working Group, is go to lymex.crowdicity.com, sign up, and then submit your information for an interview. There's a couple other quick things I'll run through for more the Tick-Borne Disease Working Group and the feds at a high level, and then if there's time, happy to take questions. So next steps on the government process with LymeX. How are we doing this? We, under the leadership of Admiral Joie, the Assistant Secretary for Health, are revising and updating our internal memorandum of understanding for defining the roles and responsibilities of the different operating divisions, staff divisions, and offices within the department. And so you will be seeing that soon. We'll do the same process as we did before, where we'll socialize it, get everyone's okay before putting it through the executive secretary process. So internal MOU coming your way soon to the HHS folks. We are also, we've drafted a Lyme disease diagnostics request for information, an RFI, and what we hope to do is put that out sooner than later for about 30 days so that industry and academic groups and innovators out there can tell us what Lyme disease diagnostics they have on the market, they're working on, will soon be in the market, and also hoping to capture with the COVID diagnostics, HHS and American taxpayers have invested nearly $2 billion in COVID diagnostics, and we've gotten really far, really fast. Some of that technology, some of those scientific discoveries and insights will be repurposable and help advance diagnostics in other fields. So we want to put out an RFI diagnostics to get a better understanding of the full ecosystem today with Lyme disease and what's on the horizon in the future. That information will help inform our very first, the LymeX diagnostics moonshot, how we have 3 focus areas, one of them being the diagnostic space. And then in terms of timing, we expect our first prize challenge to be in early, probably second quarter of 2021. It will probably end up focusing on education and prevention in the beginning, but the stakeholder engagement, the Health Plus model, all of that has already begun. And the diagnostics work will kick off with a RFI. And that's the conclusion. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My direct email is at the bottom there, as well as with the instructions on how to engage with Crowdicity. And I thank you all for granting me this time, and also for sharing your voice and being a part of this, because LymeX will become a success because many diverse voices engage, and we hear from everyone. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Honey, for sharing the information about this novel opportunity, and thank you for your role in overseeing its development. I think we can take time for a couple of questions now. If there are members of the working group who would like to address any questions now, please do.
This is Pat. Kristen, Thank you so much. That was informative. And first and foremost, I want to thank you and John Alcott for your leadership in the first working group. We really appreciate that. But my question is that what I'm hearing throughout the community is the concern is with the amount of money involved is what kind of control will the government have on the bottom line of the money? So, I mean, there's obvious concerns because of positions taken by government agencies and so on with Lyme disease in particular, that somehow this is not going to work out well for chronic Lyme patients. So is there a way to determine what role the government will play in oversight of those monies and how they're distributed for what particular projects?
Thanks, Pat. Excellent question. And what we are doing is following the KidneyX Innovation Accelerator model. And what that did was created a new entity, kidneyx.org, so this would be LymeX.org, that does not represent government and does not represent the Stephen and Alexander Cohen Foundation. It's a quasi-shared interest, a mutual interest. And we'll be standing up a LymeX steering committee. And ultimately, if we follow the KidneyX playbook, this LymeX steering committee that, again, won't be government, won't be Stephen Alexander Cohen Foundation, but will be people that are approved by both of them. This steering committee will be the final approvers of, what to focus on, how to spend the money, and greenlighting the final or the ultimate prizes, the grand prize challenges, where we put out the challenge, what the criteria are, and then open it up for any solvers to deliver the solutions. And so there will be multiple layers beneath the LymeX steering committee. We'll have an internal government, subject matter experts who can inform and advise us. We'll have a formal, scientific advisory board with external folks. But ultimately, those financial decisions will be determined by the LymeX steering committee.
Thank you.
Do we have any other further questions at this time? If not, thank you, Dr. Honey, and I think people will be taking your advice and contacting you directly as you have instructed us how to do that now. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Now we'll turn things over to Jennifer Gillison.
Good morning, everyone. So we have sent out the PDF with all of the changes that have been requested for each of the chapters. So the first one we have is the executive summary. We'll go through, for the executive summary, it was approved with editorial changes, so we'll show you what those were. So this text here was revised during the November meeting, so this is what is reflected in the yellow highlight. The second change was here, which was for the 10-fold to 100-fold. And then this here, this sentence was revised by Ben per the discussion at the November meeting. This text, and to prevent death, was also added at the November meeting. And then the agency names were reviewed and corrected wherever they appeared in the report for the November meeting. We did not receive any additional changes or editorial edits. So those are the changes that were made for the executive summary. Any questions? Jennifer, this is Leanne. I recognize we can enlarge our screen on our end, but could you also try to enlarge it on your end as well? That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so no questions about that one.
Are you ready to go on to the background?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the background chapter was approved with no changes, so we're just showing you the background in the, excuse me, template. So this is the first page here, which is a little bit harder to see since it's so enlarged. The table that continues to the second page, and then finishes here at the top with the references, and then the figure that's on the next page. We did reformat this. It looked in the November meeting that there were 3 different paragraphs that they were to be combined. So that's what is shown here, the one combined paragraph. No edits or text was changed in it, just the format. And then continues here and moves over. And that is what the background looks like. Are there any questions with the background? Okay, are you ready to go to methods?
Yes, please.
Sorry, I have a little frog in my throat today. Apologize for that. Oh, sorry. Methods section was also approved with no changes, so we're just showing you the methods in the template. So we've got the topic development briefs, the subcommittees that go to the next page. And then the information for federal inventory. Sorry. This sentence was revised based upon the information that we received from the DFO and the office. So this is what the text now reflects the statement for the federal inventory and the 508 compliance. So this is how people can get a copy of the federal inventory survey results. And then this is the public input. Sorry. And then we have the minority response. We did revise this sentence only for accuracy. There is OGC would like us to add the additional verbiage of minority responses reflect the views of the individual authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the working group or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. If you all are in agreement, this is the verbiage from OGC that this would be added after this sentence right here. I'm in agreement.
Do we have any opposition to this? Hearing none, I think we can accept that as necessary to add.
Okay, great. Are there any questions for, the methods chapter? Okay. Then we'll move on. If you're ready to chapter 3. Chapter 3 was approved with editorial changes. So we have the background that starts at the bottom. We had already made the changes to the figure, so there's no update to that. And then we go over to the next page that continues and comes over to the One Health figure and approach. The next page continues with that, and then the figure on the next page with the life cycle. Then it continues and then talks about the maps. And then the next page is about CDC, and then the additional map for the historic and current expanded distribution. And then we go into the major challenges and issues. and then also to the recommendations that continue onto this page and go through here. Are there any questions with chapter 3? Okay, I don't hear any questions for chapter 4. Are you ready to go there?
Yes, please.
So for chapter 4, this was approved with editorial changes as well. So we have the recommendations that are on this page, and then the next page is the background and major challenges and issues. The next page is the table. The table continues over onto the top of here with some explanation. Then that continues and goes into alpha-gal. That continues onto the next page here. I'm just going to make this smaller so much easier. And then the rickettsial diseases continues onto this page and over onto the next. And then ehrlichiosis and anaplasmosis goes through. Continues on this page 36, and then moves over to babesiosis and emerging tick-borne pathogens onto 37. That continues on to 38, and then the recommendations and the rationale start on 39 and continue. This was the change here. I'll enlarge it so you can see what was asked. So the sentence was referencing to the Presidential Advisory Council, and that was deleted based on the discussion from the work group at the November meeting. So this is removed. There is this unfortunately was made report, but it should be response, so that change would be made. This is the minority response for chapter 4. And that concludes chapter 4 with the editorial changes. Are there any questions?
Yes. Jennifer, in the next last paragraph in the section on Lyme disease, the first sentence refers to healthy patients. I think that should say healthy persons.
I'm sorry, David, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, the sentence that refers to healthy patients, and I think we should change that to healthy persons. It's the first sentence in the next to last paragraph of page Lyme disease on page 32.
Okay, so this is page 32.
The first sentence of the next to last paragraph of the Lyme disease section. Proteins unique to patients, ending up with healthy patients, and they should just be healthy persons.
Okay, is there agreement to change that to persons?
Fine by me.
I agree.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so that will be changed to person. Okay. It looked like Pat was trying to say something as well.
Yes, I just have a question with the minority report. For the record, we need to know who it was that did the minority report, so that it can to be entered into the record, and to ensure that it's done in a transparent fashion. So could we please have who it was that did the minority response?
I have two questions. I thought the minority reports from a procedure standpoint were kept confidential. No?
No, just the fact, the only discussion was that the names would not be put into the actual report, but everything has to be transparent, and we have no way, I don't know who wrote this, and I don't know how many people know who wrote it, and we need to know who it is that wrote it, because we need to ensure that the individual or individuals who people that were indeed in the minority. So we need the names for the record.
We know it's going to be someone who voted against the chapter, and the content of the minority response is what is important, not who the author was.
Oh, no, I disagree with you because we do need to know who wrote it. You're saying that they're part of that. We don't know that. We're the working group. We're entitled to know who wrote this minority response. It's in the report, and we're entitled to know who it is, and the public is entitled to know who it is.
How was this handled in the previous report?
Well, everyone knew who did the in our first working group. I mean, it wasn't put into the the names were not put into the reports, but everyone knew who wrote the reports. I mean, the names, everybody said, well, I'm writing a minority, this came up, a minority report, blah, blah, blah. We don't know that. We don't know who did this. So we need to know.
This would be a good point to clarify, because I was under the impression that whoever would have written the minority report, in this case or any case, would have done so with the understanding that they did not need to sign the minority report, and their name would not have been in the report next to the minority report. So
right, and it won't be.
Perhaps HHS could help us out on this, since it's primarily a rules issue. And if the concern is to affirm that the minority report author voted no, perhaps the process at HHS or with the editors could verify that independently. Whatever, but I think we need HHS to tell us what we need to do.
Well, first, can I say something, and that is, I don't want someone else to verify it. I don't know that, and quite frankly, with some of the things that have occurred, I don't necessarily trust it, and therefore, if people can't put they're sitting here on the working group in under FACA, and the public is entitled to know who put this information into the report. And so if they can't do it, then they should withdraw their report. This is for the public record.
This has been Beer at CDC, and I agree with Pat. I think that if it's a minority response, it should be attributed to those who wrote it. And I mean, and if we have a view on that, I think it's. I don't see why we wouldn't want to stand behind that, personally.
And I would see it as a FACA violation. It's not transparent.
Hi, this is Kay. Everything from a FACA perspective that needs to be done in the public domain should be transparent.
So who wrote it?
This is Gene. I wrote this.
Thank you, Gene.
Can we go back up to David's comment on the word that he had requested to be changed? I believe it was plural versus singular. And I just want to make sure that was clear in the transcript. I think I saw it come across singular. Is it healthy patient or patient?
Healthy person. PERSONS.
I don't think that's right. And healthy person? Isn't it healthy persons?
He said persons, Leanne.
Sorry, David?
He said persons.
It's not in the transcript that way. There it is. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So it says PERSONS.
Yeah, I see it. Thank you. I was just double checking. I appreciate that. Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions for Chapter 4?
So in the minority report response, the person responsible or persons responsible name will appear after the response or before the response?
I think we can make a decision how we want to establish it, but whatever it is, we standardize it.
What did we do in the first report?
No names were attributed to any of the minority responses.
So Jim, do you have a recommendation here?
I think this is a procedural thing that the Tick-Borne Disease Working Group members should decide what they want in that minority report.
Well, I suggest that a name be applied at the end of the report. Welcome other suggestions. Pat, you brought it up. Maybe.
Is that a motion, Sam?
I'll move that.
Okay, do we have a second?
Could you repeat what that motion is, please?
That the author or authors of the minority response have at the end of the response.
No, I'll second that. If the group wants to go for it, I'll second it.
Okay, let's vote. Ben?
Yes. Vote, could I just make a point of order? One of the minority responses is co-authored by 3 agencies listed. And so is that sufficient, or do you want both the agencies and the reps?
I think the names of the working group members need to appear. I don't think the agencies are identifiable because of the names. I don't think they need to appear. I think just the names, but if people want to have the agency listed as well.
Well, why couldn't they have the name and the agency then? That would seem more logical, right?
Agency
I think that's what we would prefer.
Yeah.
And just questioning, do we also need the individual names? You can get to the names by looking at the reps on the online posting.
Well, since if we're doing if we're doing names of people in here, then I think the names should be there. But your agency certainly should be behind that name, since that's who you are physically representing, right?
That's correct.
As long as it's recognized in the method section that the views of the minority responders do not reflect, etc., the views of the agency itself. That's why I'm not sure posting the agency name doesn't. I mean, the concern with it is imply that the agency is in agreement with the individual's response. So I think it's cleaner to just post the person's, the working group name or names if they're multiple authors of the response, and people can identify who they are further if they need to. I don't think they need to put.
Okay, Sam, that is your motion. Is there any further discussion of it?
Yeah, I want one more piece of discussion on that, what you just said, and that is that they already have put in, Sam, into their minority report, the agencies have listed themselves in there already. So the issue is their names should be listed. There's no reason their names shouldn't be listed as members, but they are there as agency, and it already indicates that that the reports are not necessarily the opinions of blah 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 and blah blah blah. So, and it's already been established at one of the meetings when I asked whether or not the working group members from the federal side were required to vote, what their agency position was. And the answer that I was told was yes, they were.
This is Ben. I'll just say I don't feel strongly about this, but I think I can't speak on the federal agencies that are listed in the 21st Century Cures Act. We are not special government employees. We are government employees that represent our agencies according to the way, my understanding, according to the way the working group is established. So I don't feel strongly about it, but I certainly don't have a disagreement with having the names listed as well. Just one comment is just that, there are the individuals and alternates, for the agencies. And so that could be a little ambiguous unless we list the names themselves.
I'm okay personally with having the agency and my name.
Just to be clear,
my alternate wants his name, we could add his name too.
Just to be clear, my motion is that the name should be listed. Whether the agency is listed in addition to that person's name, I feel like Ben, it doesn't strongly one way or the other. I think the name needs to be listed.
Well, then that's fine. We're arguing a moot point because the agencies already have the agencies in the report. They list the agency, that this is from the agencies. So therefore, your motion is only on the name, so let's go on that.
Well, we've had enough discussion. Could I have your vote, please, Ben?
Yes.
Coop? Scott Commons?
Yes.
Angel Davey?
Yes.
Dennis Dixon?
Yes.
Sam Donta?
Yes.
Todd Myers?
Yes.
Kevin Macaluso?
Yes.
Beto?
Yes.
Gene?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Heath?
Yes.
Went back to Coop. Scott Cooper?
Yes, David.
Okay. I vote yes, and I would like to have permission to have my name added to this minority response. I'm in agreement with it.
David, you didn't take my vote.
I'm sorry. Leanne?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes.
So, David, just to clarify, you actually did not write this minority response.
I did not.
Then your name cannot appear.
Okay.
If he voted against it and he is in agreement with it, isn't that his choice?
I didn't vote against it, Ben. I didn't vote against it.
Oh, okay. All right. I see.
Okay, Jennifer, can we move on?
Yes, so we will add Gene's name to the end of this minority response. So I'm going to move on to Chapter 5. This one was already approved. There were no editorial changes. Again, you're just looking at it in the template. So we have the recommendations that start with the background, that move over to the next, that completes in the next page, that goes to the challenges and issues, which continue on to page 46. And then we get into the actual recommendations and rationale on 47. And they continue through 48 and 49. And they conclude on page 50. Are there any questions for Chapter 5? No? Okay. So we can move to Chapter 6. Chapter 6 was approved with editorial changes. So we start with the recommendation and the background. Then it goes into major issues and challenges on page 52, which continues on to 53. So we do have the change here, which was removing this reference per the November discussion. And then on the next page, before we get to the actual recommendations, it was the CDC reference and link have been verified per the discussion during the November meeting. And then we go into recommendations and rationale at the bottom of 55. That continues on to 56. Then we go into 57. There is an editorial edit here, which is to capitalize the B from the November meeting. And then that finishes on page 58. Are there any questions or comments for Chapter 6? Okay. And not hearing any, would you like to move to Chapter 7?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Chapter 7 was approved, and there are a couple of editorial changes, edits in it. We have the recommendations that start on page 59 that continue to 60. And the text, this highlighted, the text was revised, meaning clarified by Coop based on the November meeting discussion. Then we go into page 61, which is a table and more information. 62 is, again, another table and more information that continues on 63. We get into other tick-borne diseases on 64 and 65. And that continues. Recommendations start at the end of 66 and go on to page 67 with their rationale. Continues for 68, 69. 70, and then goes into the table for 71. Shared decision-making on 72 and 73. Additional recommendations and rationale start on 74 and 75, and continue 76 and 77. And then we have the first minority response. We do have 3 in this area. As it states here, it was written by NIH, CDC, and FDA. Based upon your vote, we will add the names to the end of the response.
Those names are?
For NIH, CDC, and FDA, so NIH representative is Dennis, CDC is Ben, and FDA is Todd.
How about number 2?
So then the second, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is David Walker, and I wrote the first draft of this minority response.
Well, who finished it?
Me. It's Gene. Both of us. Both our names can be on there.
So we have on page 81 and 82. 81 is where the second minority response is. So we will add David and Jean's name to the end of it. There are also two. The quotation mark will be reversed here. And then there is the references added here and references added here for the minority response that David and Jean created. Then we have the third minority response that starts on page 83. And we'll add the author to this as well.
Who is the author? That says minority report. Do we change that to response?
Yes, that's correct. It's being changed to response.
Who's the author, please?
Devin.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Chapter 7? Are you ready for Chapter 8?
Yes.
Excuse me. Chapter 8 has been approved with editorial changes. So Chapter 8 starts on 84 with recommendations and background. There's the editorial change for the table here. Oh, sorry. So this didn't affect anything, but it was an image. We've created the into a table because of 508 compliance. So this is an actual table from the image instead of the image. Everything is still the same. There's no change to it. We just made it a table, and that was for 508 compliance. Then we come over here to page 86. The CDC link here has been confirmed and verified in the references per the November meeting. Then we go into the challenges and issues. And then on this page, so Pat has a comment here for this one, I believe. So first, the text was revised and added from the November meeting. And Pat says that the sentence is in the wrong place. Is that correct, Pat?
Yeah, so basically I think what happened is the last two sentences should be after, let's see, should be after the sentence that goes, have active infection by currently available tests. And then the last two sentences should be there. And so the last sentence in there should be the need for effective recognition, diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of all tick-borne diseases is critical given the absence of any approved vaccine to prevent these infections in humans. That doesn't belong. That's in the middle of, that is the sentence that needs to be removed and put wherever that goes. But the other two sentences finish the thoughts on the Lyme disease testing.
Okay, so we will just move this sentence to the end of the paragraph then.
As far as I know, that was where it was at the end, but I know that those other two have to go with the part about the Lyme disease testing. Talks about the early testing, and then, it talks about the complexing of the antibody.
Right. So if we take this sentence, then it would go here at the end. So it'll end with currently available tests, then it goes to it has been shown, and then there are no commercial, and then the need for effective would be here. That's how the...
Yeah, that's my understanding, and I think, Ben, I think you were working on that, right?
Yeah, that's what you're saying is correct, Pat.
Okay.
That order somehow got moved around.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will make that edit. So as we move on, recommendations start on page 88 and continue with the rationale onto 89, and then conclude on page 90. And then we do have this minority response, which has been in here. We all know that Pat wrote this one, so we will add her name to the end of this. Are there any questions or comments for chapter 8? Okay, so moving on, you ready for chapter 9?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, chapter 9 was approved with no editorial changes. However, we did need to change this here, and the reason it was changed, and I know that it is a recommendation, the issue is that for the 508 compliance, the if had to be changed from all caps to bold. Otherwise, it would not pass the 508 compliance. So that is what is changed here and the rationale for why. Are there questions about that?
That's fine.
And then we had to, so the next page here originally had F. It was changed to G, where is the inventory is. And this reflects Jim's statement about the federal inventory. Originally, we had added a placeholder for the URL, but this is the verbiage that came down from the DFO's office, and this is what it was changed to.
Sorry, just a question on that email. Shouldn't it be preceded with HTTPS / to make it a compliant email?
It's just an email, so there is
no...
it's
the email. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep. So that continues the recommendations, continue on to page 95. Again, this reflects the change that we had to make in the for the 508 compliance. That's all that is reflecting there for that recommendation. And then concludes on page 97. Are there any questions about the federal inventory, chapter 9? Okay, if not, we'll move on to chapter 10, public input. So originally when we discussed during the November meeting, it was asked to put this graphic instead of in the back to move it to the front. What we also added was the introduction to this chapter so that it would understand why we have a patient and here. So we added this as well as moving the graphic. Are there questions on to having this here with the graphic?
Sounds good.
Okay.
No, no questions.
So then we go on to the themes that were here, and they continue throughout pages 100, 101, and then they end with the process on 102. So any questions or comments for chapter 10? Okay. So if you're ready, we'll move on to looking forward. Looking forward was approved with no changes as well. So that starts on page 103, goes into the graphic into 104, the multidisciplinary report approach on 105, and then 106, and then with the core values and the shared vision that end in 107, and then we have a minority response. So we will add the authors to the end of this as well.
Who are those?
That would be Pat and Coop.
Any questions for the Looking Forward chapter? We do have in the response that the link will be corrected here for one of the references. So moving on to conclusion. So this one was also approved with editorial changes, although there's no editorial changes in here. It's 2 pages. It starts on 112 and ends on 113. Any questions or comments for conclusion?
Jennifer, this is Beto. Just one comment, and sorry, I was on mute. On the previous section, should we allusion to some of the information that was presented today, based on the initiative for the public-private partnership effort, or is that too late and should be left for later?
That's not part of the report, Beto. That was just an informational presentation.
Okay.
Okay, not hearing any questions, we'll move to appendices. So there were a number of changes requested from the November meeting for the appendices. So first, the working group members and the subcommittee member credentials have been checked and revised for consistency. We were also asked to put the categories underneath for the public members. So you see the highlight is what we've added for each of the public members. There is a question from Pat about her category that Jim or Kay will need to address.
Yeah, my question is, I noticed that you had Dr. Cummins in 2 specific categories, which was fine, physician and researcher. And obviously I am an advocate and you have me there and that's fine. But I'm also a family member. 2 of my children, very serious tick-borne diseases. And I would like to, if possible, have that added also as family member of patients, since that is a category.
Pat, this is Jim Berger, DFO. I replied back. I concurred with your request.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I didn't see that. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we will add that category after this meeting. So those are the changes that were made through this part of the appendix. Then we go into Appendix C, which is the acronyms and abbreviations, and those have been verified through what's been used throughout each of the chapters. Then we have the Appendix D, which is the Cures Act that has been added here. Now, there were questions about the charter. So the charter was renewed, and so the changes in the charter are reflected in the highlighted areas. So this here is what was changed as it is reflected in the current version of the charter. And then that's also what has been changed here is what is reflected now in the current charter. Are there questions on that? And these are the dates and who approved the new version of the charter. Are there questions on this?
Yeah, I had a question on that, and also I think I had a question on page 131. Did we get by that? I'm sorry. the $237,000?
Yes, so I just explained that. So
I'm sorry, I was thinking you were looking at the other thing, the early one on the charter about the 2 years. I didn't realize that. How does that explain that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so everything that's in yellow highlight in the charter for Appendix E is everything that has been revised for the new charter.
Oh, okay. So this is actually a revised number.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Thanks.
That's all right. And then same thing for here for when it was approved and who approved it. So those
Right.
are the changes, and that updates the charter. Are there any other questions there? Excuse me. Then we move on to Appendix F. So this was changed to state survey as you requested. This is the survey that was sent for the federal inventory to the agencies. That's the change that was made is to add survey. Otherwise, the rest of this is all of the survey that the agencies went through and responded to. Then we get to Appendix G, which I believe is 30 pages long, I believe. And these are all the references. We've gone through and made sure that all of the references that have been listed in every one of the chapters are also listed through here. We have done the cross-reference. We'll do it again just to quadruple check everything, but we have done that. And as you see, there's a lot of references. Anything that was stricken or requested to be removed have also here you see that where this is being removed because it was removed from the chapters. And same thing for this one. Are there questions on the references?
I'm here. Sorry, I was muted on the previous chapter.
Sure.
The charter ends in 2021 or 2022?
It says that it ends in 2021, which means that they will have to reissue the charter to take you through 2020.
Jennifer, this is Jim Berger, the DFO. Just to let everybody know that all charters or any of the federal advisory committees have to be reviewed and looked at and signed by the Secretary to update every 2 years.
So does that mean the next working group finishes in 2021?
No, it'll finish in 2022. I mean, the charter will continue to go on as long as there's that Congress mandates that this advisory committee continue.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions about the appendices? Okay, so that will take us to the requested changes for the front cover, the table of contents, and the back cover. Just because I'm closer to the back cover, I'll start here. So we did remove, we kept the scientists, we removed the middle photo and then the one that was duplicated on the front. So now the middle is the beware of ticks and then the tick on the blade of grass. Are there any questions or comments that you have for these three photos that are on the back cover? So if not, then we will go up here to the front. So we did make the changes so you can see the full cover together. We did make the change as you requested for having the 4 people walking, the tick on the skin, the patient, and then the help us find a cure. Those have been updated. And are there any questions or changes that you would like for that, or are we good with what you've requested?
Looks good to me.
Jen, I'd like to say that all looks good, and I want to take this opportunity to commend you and your staff for the job you have done, not only with this working group, but with the first working group. I know I appreciate it. I know the amount of work you put in, how detail-oriented it was, and time-sensitive. And I know on behalf of patients, I can certainly say that, and myself, that we appreciate that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that, Pat. So the last, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sam.
I just said here.
Oh, thank you. So the last changes that we had, and there were only a few here for the table of contents, we did add survey to the end of the federal inventory so that it matches what we say now for the Appendix F. We do have a change for Kevin to remove the MS, and then also for Lise to move the FMF. Other than that, there are no additional changes.
Jennifer, you may want to fix Beto's name, Perez de Leon.
How did that happen, Beto?
Actually, that happens frequently. Thanks, Beta.
So we will check.
Jennifer, it looks like right after Jim Berger, after the MT, there needs to be a space before the parentheses.
Leanne, the way the accreditation does it, they don't have a space. That's the way it's set up.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. I didn't know that. I didn't want to be an error.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if there's anything, so we'll make the few changes that we've discussed today. We will go through the full report and do any copy edits. If there's any egregious errors, they'll be made. Otherwise, this is back over to you. This is the report. So I'll turn it back to David and Leanne for next steps.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think I will entertain a motion to approve the entire report.
I move so.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Pat. I don't anticipate any discussion, so let's move to vote. Leanne?
Yes, I approve.
Ben?
I approve, yes.
Scott? Cooper?
Yes.
Scott Commons?
Yes.
Angel?
Approve.
Dennis?
Yes.
Sam Donta?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Beto?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Leith?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So what we have accomplished today is to have reviewed the final versions of all the chapters with the changes that had been made, and to vote unanimously to approve the report to send to HHS and to Congress. Leanne, I'll turn things over to you.
At this time, we'd actually like to take a moment and have the working group members have a moment or two to express any comments or anything they'd like to say as we bring this meeting to conclusion. We've set aside about 2 or 3 minutes, and if you don't feel you want to have a moment to provide any comments, that's certainly your decision. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start with Beto de Leon. Beto, you might be on. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity, and I just want to thank everybody for the collaboration. It was a wonderful experience, and I hope we hit the mark for the public. Appreciate it. Back to you.
Thank you, Beto. Angel Davey.
Hi, Leanne. I'll just echo what Beto said, and I guess in particular just call out you and Scott as co-chairs of the Alpha Gal subcommittee, and just want to thank all the other subcommittee members as well. I guess also, you know, in working on the public comments subcommittee, I just want to say thank you to all the patients and advocates who provided their input, whether that was, you know, being a member of a subcommittee or giving public comment at our meetings or sending an email. I definitely learned a lot working with everybody and hearing about these experiences of our patients and advocates as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Angel. Ben Beard.
Thanks, Leanne. I want to particularly thank the non-federal members of the working group because, you know, I can only imagine the sacrifice it's been for all of you, the time that you put into this. For us as representatives of our agencies, you know, we've done this over and above our job duties, but we see it, you know, in many ways as an extension of our job duties. And so I want to thank all of you, and also want to recognize the subcommittee participation. I don't know if any of them are on the call, but for the record, they did a really marvelous job and worked really hard and put together a great subcommittee report. And I thank the patients and other advocacy group members and those who submitted public comments, and you know, those just want to assure you that I listen to those, I share those with the rest of the agency, and we appreciate all that you have to share with that. And I want to thank everyone for working together. And it was, you know, a good experience, a learning experience. And I think it will be an important report that will have an impact, hopefully, on the direction of the field and resources that are available to us to do our job better. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Dixon.
Thank you, Leanne. I also appreciate everybody's efforts on this committee, and I appreciate the chance of having to serve and work with each of you. I do think this working group has demonstrated some valuable points, and just to summarize what I see as the top 3, the value in considering multiple viewpoints when addressing a very difficult and controversial topic, the value of coming together to strive for a consensus report, and last but not least, the value of letting everyone be heard through minority reports when we're not able to come to uniform agreement on particular topics. I think we've proved that you can learn when there's differences of opinion, and it's important to put those out there and to work toward better resolutions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean Shapiro.
I just want to thank everybody for all their hard work, particularly the chairs and Jennifer and her team.
Thank you, Jean. Kevin Macaluso.
Just echoing everyone's previous comments, I would like to thank our subgroup who helped Beto and I put together a really nice chapter. It was a lot of effort, and I do appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone's working on this subgroup or on this committee together. It's been a very educational experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Lead States.
Thank you. I guess I want to start by saying thank you to everybody on the work group. It's been a pleasure and absolute joy just learning and sopping up and distilling my purposes early in a federal career to move forward and take some of these lessons learned and apply them not only just for Tick-Borne in the future, but across disease processes and things that are important to a wider network of folks outside of who we may come in contact within our bubble of the federal government. And, I think just in keeping with some of the other lessons learned, it's been a clinic to me, and, the lesson of just because we don't agree doesn't mean we can't make progress. So that idea of incremental change, being hard fought, this deck plate, trenches level has been on full display. And I know it's not always been pleasant, but I do feel that everyone has at least been heard. And it's, been a further, example of me that, we don't have to live in a cancel culture. We can actually hear and incorporate and actually make some forward movement in the needle. And I'm excited for where this falls within the greater tapestry of ongoing efforts across HHS and the federal government, especially with this transition period we find ourselves in. This is something that is reflective of what I think Dr. Honey said earlier about this kind of being a nice a continued charge, less the collective efforts across CDC, NIH, into the private area with LymeX, and then as we get forward with in OASH with coming together for this national strategy, this is going to be something that I hope can serve as, that sounding board for continued change, incremental as it may be, something that's been worthwhile. So thank you to everyone, and thank you especially to the patients that have chimed in during the public comment periods. Those words don't go unheard, and just thank you again, and stay well and be safe, everyone.
Thank you. Pat Smith? First, I'd like again to thank the people on the first working group for everything they did. The report they achieved was phenomenal and had incorporated issues that were important to patients, and congratulate them for that achievement. I was excited for the progress and for patients who had hope for the future. Now, unfortunately, I have to say that I thank this part is not unfortunate. I thank the subcommittee members who worked hard on our working group these 2 years. I thank the public for their comments, and also for their written comments. I thank Jim and Kay, of course the staff, and I thank those current working group members who demonstrated their commitment to supporting long-suffering chronic Lyme patients. I especially thank my chapter co-chair, Captain Scott Cooper, an advanced practice provider from CMS who worked tirelessly and selflessly to help patients. However, despite all these efforts, it's my opinion, and I'd be hypocritical to say otherwise, that this report will do little to help patients. Flawed from the onset, I believe this working group member selection was cloaked in secrecy about who they were. If we did find out who they were, we were not permitted to release their names. And when the IDSA unilaterally publicly announced the appointment of Eugene Shapiro to the working group, speculation was rampant among the community as who was really in charge of the working group. And I think the handwriting was on the wall, and it was no surprise when Dr. Shapiro, who's an author on the last IDSA guidelines, was permitted, without working group discussion or knowledge except by Chairman Walker, to give up his proxy vote to Walker when he missed meetings. And so that rankled a lot of people. He wasn't at the table to hear the discussions and be a part of the discussions for consensus. And since meeting one, when Chairman Walker announced Lyme had already been done by the first working group, and this one would do a brief update and concentrate on other tick-borne diseases, it was clear the patient interest would be targeted. Each meeting, the patient chapter was rigorously scrutinized and held to a different standard than other chapters. And after some attempts to allow people to write a minority report before any consensus vote was taken, fortunately, the majority of the working group did not allow that to happen. But 2 weeks ago, the tenor of the report discussions changed, going to an entire rewrite of our chapter, and it devolved into a real food fight, for lack of a better term, and a motion to keep the chapter as it was passed 8-6, and 3 minority reports have been produced for that chapter. The government agencies have been forced to take a public stance against the patient chapter, dismissing chronic Lyme disease and continuing the denial of treatment to sick patients, alongside their partners in a powerful medical society, one whose news guidelines were just released 2 days ago. The public talk has centered on what is good for the patient, but their decisions don't reflect that sentiment. The question thus becomes, whose interest was this panel designed to serve? Those are the patients who for 2 decades fought to pass the enabling legislation for this panel to help focus on their plight, chronic Lyme disease, or for medical specialty societies' special interests. And in closing, other diseases are treated seriously. HIV researchers developed a gold standard test within a few years. Lyme still has none. Leprosy has had more clinical trials than Lyme disease, which ranks 14th out of 15 in diseases and infectious disease trials. Within 9 months, COVID-19 had several treatments, tests, and upcoming vaccines. To patients, I am really sorry that you have been again marginalized by those charged with your health, but we gratefully thank any current working group members who worked hard to provide the help you so desperately need. And I leave you all with a quote from the late Isaac Asimov, noted author. Quote, "Your assumptions are your windows on the world. Scrub them off every once in a while or the light won't shine in." Unquote. These windows haven't been scrubbed in almost 46 years. Thank you.
Sam Donta?
Thank you all for being part of the working group in this important process. I feel fortunate to have been able to share what I know and don't know about Lyme disease over the many years that I've been involved with research and taking care of patients. I'm especially grateful for the 2 subcommittees that I shared this round of the working group, pathogenesis and pathophysiology, and the clinical aspects. Being able to listen to experts with their astounding impressions and results, and the generation of 2 very important reports that have already been submitted and are on the HHS website, and to this current report, which I'm still optimistic that it includes important information on how to proceed with Lyme disease and the other tick-borne diseases. I hope that HHS and Congress will heed the report and be able to move quickly and more expeditiously to help solve some of the controversies that exist with Lyme disease. Again, thank you all for being part of this important process.
Thank you. Not sure if we have Sam Perdue that would like to make a comment. Okay, we'll go to Scott Cummins.
Thank you, Leanne.